It is almost 2 years to the day that a 91-year-old woman died just steps away from her Brantford, Ontario retirement home. Police found Vera Wilson lying partially under a bush and covered in snow, nearly 6 hours after she'd wandered out into the frigid night. Her family has been trying ever since to figure out how it happened and what can be done to prevent similar tragedies. Katie Nicholson has been looking into the story and is here to tell us more about it. And first of all, welcome. I remember this when it happened, reporting on it nearly 2 years ago. Just such a heartbreaking story. What happened to Vera Wilson?
Well, with Vera, you have to know that she hated the cold. She grew up in Saskatchewan, and she always used to tell her son, Brian, she never wanted to go back to Saskatchewan in the winter because it was so cold. And so it was really hard for him to understand how it is that she died. He was shoveling his driveway that morning, and 2 Brantford police officers came up to him to give him the news. Here's Brian Wilson.
How could this happen? How could she leave the building and not be detected leaving the building, and ended up freezing to death? This is how she died.
So Brian says he was also never told by the retirement home or any retirement home that his mother was at risk of wandering. He knew that she had dementia and some mild Alzheimer's. So we were able to get the geriatric and long-term care death committee report, and it sort of outlines what happened. So surveillance video footage captured her leaving the retirement home at about 10:28 at night. Out through a door that locked behind her. It was a service door that was apparently unalarmed. They capture her sort of walking around the property a little bit, and Brian was actually able to watch that footage and saw some of his mother's last moments. The committee report sort of walks us through when it is that staff realized she was missing at 2 a.m. They did 2 internal checks of the building. At 3 a.m., a manager drove around outside and around the neighborhood just to see if she had been walking outside. And at 4, they called police. So 2 hours after they discovered she was missing, and it was shortly after that that they discovered her body in the bushes. And at that point, she had likely been dead for quite some time.
So when you looked at the information from the committee that reviewed her death, what did it find and what recommendations did it make?
Well, it noted that even though she had shown signs of decline and that she was prone to wandering, there didn't appear to be any conversations with the family about moving her to a more secure or safe environment. It also made a number of recommendations: alarm all doors, make sure that the protocols when there's a missing resident include looking at the surveillance camera footage immediately, calling police immediately. So those were some of the changes, and also more regular reassessments of a dementia resident's needs, for example. We did reach out to Seasons to ask if they were implementing these recommendations. They didn't give us an interview, but they did say that their patient or their resident safety was paramount to them. It was their #1 priority. The thing is, residents, sort of these retirement homes, they are residencies as opposed to long-term care homes. They're governed a little differently, and it really is the goodwill of the sector to implement these recommendations. Plus, these recommendations are non-binding. They come essentially from the coroner's office. So that's really where that lays. We just don't know if these have been implemented, and Brian Wilson still doesn't know what the protocols were or if they have changed.
So he still must be in limbo to a certain degree, even as he continues to mourn the passing of his mother. As you've looked at this story, you've learned that this is not an isolated incident. Just how common is this kind of an occurrence?
Yeah, so there are multiple incidents of this happening in media reports over the years. But when we drilled down, we were able to find out that provinces and territories aren't looking at this specific subset of data, but we got 53 coroner's reports from Quebec, all dealing with elderly people who had died of hypothermia. I went through those, and I found 11 cases of individuals with some sort of cognitive decline who had been living in a long-term care facility who wandered and sadly died. Those reports making a lot of the same recommendations as the one in Vera Wilson's case. Alarm doors and needing to have a better match between the services the residents need and the services that are being provided. So really addressing those gaps. I guess the other thing that people should really be aware of is that this is going to be a growing issue. So we talked to Dr. Samir Sinha at Mount Sinai. He's the head of geriatrics there. And he pointed out by 2030, there's going to be 1 million Canadians projected to have dementia, and that 1 in 6 of them will exhibit some sort of wandering behavior. So here's a little bit of 6 in 10 of them will, so 60% rather, much higher number, 60%,
yeah, so 60%
will exhibit some sort of wandering behavior. So here's Dr. Sinha.
That's a huge number of people who potentially could be in a situation like this. So I'm not being alarmist, I'm just saying this is going to happen more and more and more with time. And how do we actually prevent any of this from happening in the first place? And there's so many things that we can do if we're more appropriately proactive around issues like this.
So Heather, important questions for you. If you have a loved one in a retirement home, ask what the emergency protocols are. What is the code yellow for when a resident goes missing? Is there surveillance footage? Is that part of it? Do they look at that right away? Do they call police right away? Are the doors all alarmed? And crucially, are there regular assessments and are there clear reporting lines? So if an assessment is made and there's a decline, does the home know who to contact? Who is the designated decision maker for the resident if the resident's not able to make decisions about their own care? And is that being communicated effectively and in a timely manner if you need to step up what it is that a resident needs in terms of safety?
Katie, thank you for all of this story in particular, but also, as you say, indicating where we'll be as a country, as a society in the very near future, things to think about in the near term. Katie Nicholson, thank you very much.